Good morning, guys. Morning, Omolemo. Morning, Sia.
Morning, ma'am.
We'll wait 5 minutes and then we'll start. I just opened last week's lecture. As you guys know, I was sick last week. I have COVID, so I couldn't attend the lecture. The academic manager will put up the 2 links that I recorded, but I'll also go through some of the Excel today from last week's lecture. So if anyone has any questions, they can ask me about last week's lectures. We'll just wait 5 minutes to see who else joins us. Hopefully students do join us today, because in today's lecture, we're going to talk about the line graph that you need to do for the summative assessment. Thanks, Omalemo. I thought everybody knew. I don't know who didn't know, but yeah, I did have COVID. That's why I couldn't come to the class last week. But it's not that bad, to be honest. Even though I'm coughing now, I'm still not 100%, but it's not that bad. Hi, Kylie. So how are you doing? Hi, Taban. So I'm sure all of you got your marks. You'll notice that there's only like a few students, but we didn't really apply the plagiarism penalty unless you really, really plagiarized, okay? So like I've been saying over and over since you submitted your assessments, please make sure that wherever you use a direct quote, and a direct quote is 3 words or more from a source, okay, that you put it in quotation marks. The second years are all crying and writing to us because they're saying, why did you put the plagiarism penalty? Why? And we have to explain to them that they didn't use quotation marks where they used a direct quote. And a direct quote, I take it as 3 words or more from a source, okay? So make sure that you put that in, make sure you understand the difference of, we will do it in next week's or the following week's lectures, the difference between informative writing and persuasive writing, etc. But make sure that your writing follows the conventions and you're doing the correct thing, okay? And then remember that even if you are taking points about the differences between an informative speech and a persuasive speech, that if you take it from a source, that you quote the source and you put it in quotation marks. Anything that is not your own, okay, needs to be done in this way. I think that maybe we're going to be a little bit stricter with the summative assessment because we don't want the same problem to happen in the second year. Okay, so I'm advising you, make sure anything in your assignment that is not your own words, that is a quote, put it in quotation marks. If it's paraphrased, it's fine. Make sure you know how to paraphrase correctly. Make sure the referencing list is written according to referencing conventions. Okay, alrighty, so it's about 20 past now. I think that we're going to get started. So guys, I was saying that if you didn't know, I have COVID and I had it from last week, Monday, and that's why I couldn't come to campus last week. I'm feeling better, but I'm not 100%. And then the academic manager is going to upload videos, okay, but these lectures were very short actually, okay, but I'm going to go through it today quickly, just the first one on Excel, because you might not understand some concepts about Excel. So we're going to go through lecture 22 and then we'll start lecture 23. Lecture 23 is important because it shows you how to do the line graph. All right, let's get started with this lecture first quickly. All right, so like I said, this is last week's lecture that I'm going to go through briefly. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. So we're going to talk about Excel and functions in Excel. We're going to do very simple calculations in this very short lecture here. Right, so pages 346 to 350 of Anderson et al. So what is Microsoft Excel? It's a software program that can be used to calculate or recalculate, record and plan numbers and statistics for various reasons. So the program can also be used to represent data in graph or table formats, which we're going to do a little bit later. So in this section, we're going to look at some of the basic functions of Excel and calculations that you can use to apply some of the maths concepts that we discussed earlier. So in Microsoft Excel, you're going to get a workbook and you can create worksheets. And in every worksheet, there are many rows and columns, and each block is called a cell. It's useful to think about each cell as an individual calculator. So I'm going to show you what I mean here. Okay, so here we go. We see at the top there, it says book 1, Excel. So this entire thing is a book. At the bottom, you see there, it says sheet 1. Okay, so just make sure you can see this. Okay, and then when we click on the plus sign here, we can add sheet 2. So in the video lecture, I was saying we can name this November 2021, December 2021, January 2022, etc. Especially for someone like me who has to do my taxes, that's what I do. So I separate the months and do the calculations. So then we see at the top here, we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O. It goes to Z. So those are the columns, and then at the bottom here we have the rows. I forgot the exact number that Excel goes to. Okay, so we just know those are columns and rows. And here, if we see that cell is highlighted, that's A1, cell A1. Questions? No questions? Oops. Alrighty. So in each cell, you can enter a formula or a calculation. When you enter a formula in Excel, Excel calculates the result of the formula and displays the result of the calculation in the cell. You can also link different formulas together from different cells to combine calculations. So we're going to see how we do the second part of that. The easiest way to make use of the functions in the cells is as follows. So ensure that you have highlighted one cell. So you highlight the cell by clicking into it. Okay, and then you'll see that green highlighted block. Enter into the cell the equal to sign. Now, in Excel, we have to enter the equal to sign whenever we want to do calculations. If we don't enter the equal to sign, then it means that the calculation is going to come out wrong. We're going to get an error message from Excel, okay? So we need to put that equal to sign first. Now the cell knows that you want to enter a formula into it, and then you type in your sum and you press enter. So let's look at an example over here. So if you want to calculate an addition sum in a cell, such as 5 plus 2, you enter the equal to sign in A1, you can see it's there, and then you type the sum and you press enter, and the answer comes up in Excel. It does the calculation for you as 7. Okay, and then you can apply this process in all kinds of operations. So you can do it for multiplication, division, etc., etc., etc. And there's other things that you can do in Excel as well. Questions? All right, so as I said, we can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and you will use these symbols when you want to carry out those kind of operations in Excel. So sometimes in Excel, it will show you a warning instead of just entering your formula. This will happen if the formula you typed is invalid, if it's not a format that Excel recognizes, okay? So we need to make sure that we're doing the correct thing in Excel and we're using the correct way to write the formula. So the program will tell us what we did wrong. And then when we do the calculations, we must make sure that we use the data or results you have already typed in other cells of the worksheet. So, sorry, this is another point. So sometimes we want to calculate a sum from a different set of data that's maybe further along in the Excel sheet. So we can do this, okay, and link other formulas into our worksheet. And then Excel will automatically update the calculation if the information in the linked cells changes. So we're going to see what I mean here. So let's go through this process quickly, and then I'm going to show you how we do it. Okay, let me just explain it here rather. Okay, so as you can see here, we want to calculate B1 and B2. Okay, so in the sum, I put the equal to sign. I say B1 plus B2. It's these two numbers over here. And then it's going to give us our answer. Our answer is obviously going to be 30. But what the great thing about this is when we do it with the cells, if we update these numbers, the answer is going to automatically update to the new value. So we don't need to keep constantly changing the values all the time. Excel is a very smart way of working and doing calculations, especially when it comes to budgets or taxes and things like that. Any questions? It does take some effort and getting used to when we work with Excel. Yes, Omo? Omalemo?
Okay, ma'am. So the equal sign always comes first, then the other symbols we can like use them in between.
Yeah, so you need to always highlight what you're doing. So you see in Excel, we always work with cells, right? So we talk about each of these blocks are cells. And then usually we want to calculate across. So this is just like an introductory lesson to Excel, right? But usually, yes, you always start with the equal to sign because it's a sum. And then you can even say C4 plus E5, etc., and it's going to do the calculation there. Because remember, when we work with Excel, we're working with sometimes a lot of figures, okay, for a company or a business, etc., or our own personal budget, or like I do my taxes, etc. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, any other questions? And then I did also say there's a very nice Udemy course that I did. It was so cheap. It was like 300 Rand. And it was so in depth about Excel. But with Excel, you have to use it all the time to get experience with it. Because if you're not using it all the time, you're going to forget how to do things and how to use it. Okay, so in addition to the basic operations you can perform in Excel, there are also many other and more complicated operations you can perform with pre-programmed functions. Yes, so Excel has many, many, many functions. It's such a wonderful program, okay? So you can add totals, averages, percentages, and you can do all other financial specific functions that can be used to do in the cells in worksheets. Okay, so it's good if you have Microsoft Excel, if you do have MS Microsoft Office, that you experiment and you see how to do certain things, even when it comes to the charts, which we're going to talk about today. Okay, so there's also the help, Microsoft Excel help. So if you click into it, you can even go online and search how to do things and how to use these functions effectively. Questions? So if you see here, when you use function and help as well, and it's going to give you a detailed explanation of what each of these functions do. Okay, and then here you see, I'm not sure what sum if is, but I know sum, average, count, if hyperlink max. Okay, so there's a range of different functions that Microsoft Excel can do for you, and it's normally in this function tab here. So when you click on function, it's going to give you all the list of all these things, and it's also in formulas, okay, where you can do a lot of different calculations. So it's good to play around with it to see what it can do, how it can help you. But more specifically, we just think, just add the numbers together. But no, Microsoft Excel is very smart. So if you can understand how to do things properly, it will help you enormously whenever you have to do any kind of math calculations. Right, any questions before I move on to today's lecture? Alrighty, so let's go to today's lecture. We're gonna look at how we do graphs in Excel. I just want to see if I have my Excel sheet open. Okay, I do. Yeah, Shirley, I was doing last week's lecture, just an initial what's going on here? Just an initial lecture about last week's lecture that I missed, but there will be a video of it as well. And the academic manager will put it on to Core Campus, but it's not that difficult to understand. Okay, but if you do need to join that lecture, do join it. Alrighty, so guys, let's get into today's lecture. We're continuing with Microsoft Excel. Okay, obviously I didn't do this, so you might have questions which you can ask me about next week. Okay, all right, so we're on pages 350 to 364 of the textbook. So open up your textbook to these pages. So yes, we will be talking about the line graph today, and I will open up my Microsoft Excel to show you. I just want to open up my textbook page here. All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to talk about basic graphs and tables and how to understand data in Microsoft Excel. So once we have our data collected, so remember we do a process of getting data, right? And we need to organize and summarize it, so it's going to be easy for us to understand, easy for the people we're presenting it to understand. And we can do it in many different ways. So data is initially organized into a frequency or tally table, which different types of graphs are used to represent these frequency or tally totals during the data collection. So these graphs are then used during the data analysis process, and we will look at the types of tables and graphs available to represent these calculations. Okay, so we can collect data in various different ways: surveys, questionnaires, market research. So a lot of the time, companies are constantly getting our data. There's a thing now in digital technologies, and it's called big data, and it's where they collect vast amounts of data. Okay, and we need to know, how do we present this data? So we need to understand totals about many different kinds of data and how to present them. Okay, frequency and tally tables are used for the purpose of collecting data. So say, for example, you want to represent the number of students in each academic year at a specific university in graph or table form. So there are 1,675 first year students, 1,600 second year students, and 1,234 third year students. You can represent these totals in a table, or more specifically in a frequency table. Okay, so here is a frequency table. So we see here at university and the number of students, and this is what the frequency table will look like. Usually we input numbers like this in the same way in Excel for us to form a graph or a bar chart, a bar graph or a pie chart, etc. Questions, comments? Why is it not changing? I don't have my PC stuck, guys. Ugh, what the hell? Just wait a second. Okay, just wanna go back here. All right, there we go. Cool. So a tally table, what is a tally table? So when we represent the total number of answers to simple yes/no questionnaires, we can use a tally table. A tally table helps you to count respondents' answers by indicating each answer with a mark. To make counting easier, the tallies are grouped in fives, with the fifth item being represented as a line crossing out the other four tallies. Okay, we can use a tally table to calculate the total number of answers in a questionnaire as follows. So here we're just calculating the answers, especially when it's a yes/no answer. Okay, so we see answer, number of respondents, and total. So these are just ways of grouping information together. Here we're not doing any kind of graph yet. Okay, we're just trying to understand the data in a simple way. Questions? All right. So once we have the data and it's tabulated and recorded in tables and other formats, we can display the data and what the data means in reports. So these reports usually use graphs to display the data. There are different types of graphs and visual representations of data. Certain graphs are better suited to represent specific kinds of information. So, excuse me. We usually get pictographs, double bar graphs, pie charts, histograms, bar graphs, and line graphs, and we're going to look at them and talk about them today. I thought tally on the last stroke, you cancel. What do you mean, Shirley? So yeah, it says here that you can cancel it. But I think that's just for like counting purposes. So that's for a tally table. Okay, so let's go to the first one. We're going to talk about pictograms. So pictograms use images to represent numerical data, and each image represents a certain number of items. In the figure below, each image of a person represents 5 students who attend a tutorial. By representing the number of students in this way, data is condensed. So if you look on page 352, there's an example of a pictogram there, and then they give you the total. So it says weekday, number of students who attended the lecture, and then the total number, okay? So it says Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, okay? And then it should give you a total representation of the students who attended. Okay, so in the example on page 342, that says one person is 5 students. Okay, so here I'm just giving you a visual representation. Okay, it's not exact like the textbook, but it's just an example of what a pictogram will look like. Questions? So yes, guys, when I was preparing this PPT, I didn't do it 100% like the textbook. Okay, I did it more for understanding, so you can understand the concept of what is meant to be done. Okay, so remember that we can do a pictogram in many different ways. We can use different values to represent the data as well. So basically, picto comes from the word picture. So we use picture to display facts and figures, etc. Okay, so pie charts. Who wants to tell me what's a pie chart? Okay, so let's get into a pie chart. So pie charts are good in representing different variables in proportion to one another. The different slices or segments of the pie chart show how the whole consists of different parts, i.e. percentages of a whole. So the following figure below shows the percentages of students who have particular electronic devices. So the chart shows that the majority of students, 77%, use smartphones. A personal computer is the least used electronic device according to the students polled. Okay, so here we go. Oh, I think I just put this in to show you the variations, but I didn't exactly change it. It just says Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So yeah, it should be smartphone, tablet, Kindle, PC, etc. And you can actually change that. I'm not sure if I did do it that way though. Let me just check here in Excel. But I just want to show you how we, I don't know why. Okay, there we go. I want to show you how we do it here in Excel. Okay, so here we go. Okay, I think I put in the wrong value, so I didn't put smartphone, tablet, Kindle, PC, etc. But what you would basically do, you would list the item here, okay? And then you will put the percentage here. Kylie, so I'll come to you. And then what you'll do is you'll highlight the cells. Now mine will look a little bit different because I use a Mac, and yours might look a little bit different when you're doing that. We'll then go to insert and we'll say recommended charts, and it's going to show us this here. And then we click on pie chart. So we can have it in various different ways. You can see we can represent the data in different ways, but we'll click on the pie chart option to create a pie chart. Yes, Kylie, so you have a question? Kylie, so?
Ma'am, I wanted to answer about the pie charts, but you passed that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, good. So yes, we can see here when we want to show percentages of a whole, it's good to use a pie chart. Are there any questions about how to create a pie chart? Is it understandable? Okay, so let's go on with the lecture. Okay, so then we get to a bar graph. Yes, who wants to answer what's a bar graph? Yes, Kylie, so.
So, okay, a bar graph, it has bars that do not touch, and then it has an independent and a dependent variable on the Y and the X axis. And that's where, yeah, I think that's enough, yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool, exactly. So let's get into it. A bar graph. Okay, so bar graphs are used best when you want to compare information. So the data is represented by horizontal or vertical bars that differ in height according to their values. So in the figure that we're going to look at next, it shows the bar graph's vertical axis at the y-axis. So sorry, it's the x-axis and the y-axis. And it shows the number of students, while the horizontal axis shows the days of the week. It can be seen that the day with the highest attendance of students was Monday with 50 students in attendance, while the most poorly attended day was Friday with 30 students in attendance. So let's just have a look here. So yes, we can see this is how we do the bar graph and each of the days. So we see that we have, I didn't label the X and the Y axis here, but here we would have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on the x-axis, and then the number of students on the y-axis, okay? And then we would also have a chart title. So let me just go here to my Excel sheet and show you. Okay, so this is a different one where I did label it, but I was doing this for the last one, okay? So here we see days of the week at the bottom, and we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the number of people on the y-axis there. And then we would just basically do this, guys. So we always have to have, when we're creating an Excel sheet, Excel graph, we always have to put in the data, okay, in a certain way like this. So here are days of the week, attendance figures, or student attendance in a week. Let me see if I did it here. Okay, no. So, and then we'll go, as I said again, to, where was it now? Insert, and then we can go here to recommended chart, and it's going to give us whichever chart fits best with the data that we have. And then obviously we know that we want this bar graph. Questions? It's a graphical display of data using bars of different heights. So it's, yes, but it depends on the values, right? So here, because the values, if all the values were 50, it would all be the same height. But obviously the values are different. So that's why the bars are for different height. It's showing the data in a graph form. Okay, Cindy? Right, so let's continue. I will get to the point where I'm going to show you about the axes and how to put the chart title, etc. Okay. Oh, I don't know why this is happening, but anyway. Guys, is there load shedding? All right, let's continue. So double bar graphs allow you to compare two sets of data against the same criteria. The double bar graph in the figure below compares the marks in percentages of two students across 4 academic terms, and it can be seen that students. Okay, guys, sorry about that. Actually, the meeting wasn't over, but my internet kicked out for a reason. Sorry about that. I hope the others join us. Please send them the link, and let me just send you the third link if we do go into it right now. So here is the third meeting link if we do go into the third meeting today. Please, if you can, and if you know anyone else, please send them the link for today, the second lecture. Okay. So like I was saying before, my internet kicked me out. Right. So double bar graphs allow you to compare two sets of data against the same criteria. So we're going to look at the double bar graph in the next figure, and it compares the marks of student or percentage of two students across 4 academic terms. And we're going to see that student B consistently performed better academically than student A across all 4 terms. Okay, so here we go. This is what we talk about when we say a double bar graph. So we can see student A and student B in 2 different colors. And it says here, you can see the marks, and student B consistently performed better than student A. Okay, so let's go quickly to Excel and see how we do it. So here we go. So here we go. So we have the double bar graph, and we see comparison of marks of student A and student B. I just want to draw your attention to how we first put in the data in Excel so that we can get this kind of information. So we say student A, student B, term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4. And then once again, we highlight the data and then recommended charts, and it's going to give us this chart over here. Okay, any questions about a double bar graph? So remember, guys, this lecture will be recorded. So if you want to come back to it to see how you do certain things in Excel, you can either look at this lecture or you can even Google online if you're struggling with something. In the assessment, the summative assessment, they give you a line graph, so it's not too difficult to understand how to do, okay? All right, let's go back to the lecture. Okay, so histograms. Histograms also allow you to compare data sets. The difference between a bar graph and a histogram is that on one axis in the histogram represents continuous intervals, such as increasing numbers, which means there will be no spaces between the bars. So most often this occurs on the x-axis, seeing as it represents a continuous data range, increasing measurements. Often the bars in a histogram also represent intervals or classes into which the data has been grouped. We group data into classes to make it easier to represent the data on the graph. So we are on page 355, so you can have a look there. I didn't exactly do it 100% as a textbook, but we can see here that we can group the data in specific percentages. And to be honest, I wasn't sure how to do this exactly in Excel. It was a little bit challenging for me. I just created the histogram chart. So I must see how to actually do it with the percentages, because basically when I did it, it gave me this, which is actually correct, but the values at the bottom were different. And I wasn't sure how to exactly plot the values according to how the textbook did it. Okay, but we can see here that it does exactly give you the percentages in a certain way. And here we can see in my histogram between 55 and 60% was the highest number of students that attained those marks. But if we had to plot information in a histogram, let me just escape here. Here is the information of a histogram. So here we have students, okay, student A until X, and then here we have the different test scores. And basically, once again, look at how the information is presented when we want to do a histogram. And then we would go insert, and then recommended chart, and then we will find the one, I think it was here, I just went here. Or one of the ways that I did it, I can't even remember exactly here. Okay, so here I had to specifically say histogram. Okay, it wasn't given to me in the recommended chart. So I had to specifically say histogram, and then it gave me this kind of information plotted here. Like I said, I wasn't too sure about how to categorize it in specific percentages here, okay, on the x-axis. So when I find out how to do that, I will definitely let you know about that. Questions, comments? Okay, let's continue. So guys, if there's something you're unsure of, please ask me, okay? Right, let's continue. So that's the histogram. Now we're getting into the line graph or line charts. So line graphs or line charts are used to show data that change continuously over time. These graphs are useful in highlighting data trends and changes, which in turn can help you notice and provide commentary on emerging patterns. What is a data trend or change? Anyone? Anyone want to guess at least? Yes, Omolemo?
I think it shows you how like the data changes over time.
Good, exactly, yes. So when we talk about trends, okay, it means how the data changes over time, okay? So yes, good, Sia. So yes, so how is it changing? How, for example, if we want to say that, say, your marks were 40%, then it went to 50%, then 60%, 80%. So we can see a positive increase in the data change over time. Okay, so how whatever data you're presenting changes over time, what is the trend of change? Okay, and we use this kind of information a lot in many, many things around the world. Okay, so in the figure below, the line graph represents students A's marks in percentage over here. You can see that student A's marks drop slightly in some too, but they improve throughout the year. So here we go, we can see we have the terms, okay, on the x-axis, and then the percentages on the y-axis, and it says student A's academic performance in 2017, and it was 60, then it went up to about 65, then it went to 75, and then it went right up to 80. And I'm hoping this is the change I'm going to see in your marks when I'm marking the summative assessment. So let's see how we do this, because this is going to be important for the summative. And escape, right. So here we go. Okay, so here's the line graph. As you can see how I plotted it, right? So term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4, and then the percentages. So 60, 65, 75, and 80, this is what the student got for the year. And then once again, all we do is highlight and recommend a chart, and it's going to give us the information and how we would like to present it. So I'm sure this information is available both at on a Mac and as well as a Windows system, okay? And yeah, I think that I just here, whenever you create a chart, so if I didn't have this data, it's going to give me this, it's going to say recommended chart, okay? And then it's going to give me whatever I put in. So if I didn't put this percentage here, and I let's say I removed this and I just did this, okay, and then I say recommended chart, and then you'll see it comes up here with chart title, and then you change the chart title to whatever you want it to be. So here I changed it, I clicked into it, and I changed it student A's academic performance in 2017. Okay, So, but as long as you list the data, like in this way, it's going to come out like this. Are there any questions about this that I need to explain? Because you're going to do this for your summative. I do have something else to tell you. So yes, remember that in your summative, you're going to be using a Word document. So this is quite easy, guys. When you do it on Excel, you're just going to click on the chart and you're going to say copy. And then you're going to go into your Word document. Let's open a new Word document here. And then you're just going to paste it. Okay, so Control C, Control V. Okay, and then it's going to give you, so at the top there, you can just write, you can move this down. So it just works like a typical chart, I presume. And then let me see here if we want to move it. Format, I think it is format. Okay, so anyway, I think that when you want to move it more down, you're going to have to make this, yes, here it is. So you need to wrap the text tightly, okay? So if you want to move it, you just say wrap text tightly, and then you can move it anywhere in your document. It should work like that, yes. See? So now I can just move it anywhere I want in the document instead of struggling to know how to place it. Questions? Okay, so that is the line graph. And as I said, this is what you'll be using for your summative assessment. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so the type of graph you choose is dependent on the aspects of the available or collected data you want to highlight, and you should carefully consider which type of graph to use to ensure that your information is displayed in the most accessible and easily understandable way. So you should use something that's good for your audience or what is asked of you, especially when it comes to the environment that you're in. Okay, so different work environments will specify, do a bar graph, do a pie chart, etc., etc. Okay, so once you have collected all the data for a research project, your data will be disorganized, and this is referred to as raw data. Raw data needs to be organized in order to represent it via different types of graphs. Once properly organized and then displayed via appropriate graphs, we can use the data as descriptive statistics, which will communicate meaning to readers. The first step is organizing raw data is to tabulate the information into either a frequency or tally table. So that's why that frequency or tally table was important, or is important rather, when we want to create a graph or a chart in Excel. Okay, like I've been showing you on Excel, we always put the information in for us to get the graph. So frequency tables often use tallies to organize raw data. Okay, so you can look back at the frequency tables that we did in the beginning, okay, of how we understand data. It's on pages 351, where you see the kind of information that we use. So usually in Excel, we have to represent things numerically, okay? We cannot use a tally table specifically because we need the totals. We always use totals in Excel. Questions, comments? Just out of curiosity, who knows how to use Excel? Or who, excuse me, who has used Excel before this lecture? Okay, cool. At least some of you have tried. I hope that you do continue to use it, because let me tell you,
Yeah, but just keep trying. And then I can also give you a link to that course, guys. It's not that expensive and it's such a good course if you have the perseverance to complete it. I haven't completed it, to be honest, but it's such a good course. I've completed like half of it. And let me tell you, Excel is so important in the workplace. Like if you know Excel, it's so easy to get a job. So it's good to keep practicing and using Excel, to be honest. I mean, if I know Excel like 100%, I could easily get another job, to be honest, because that's how often it's used in the workplace. Okay. So try to get more experience with it as much as possible. So the raw data represented in the tally table in the previous section consisted of a collection of answers to a question given by respondents in a survey. The researcher would have collected all the questionnaires distributed in the sample and then would have counted and transferred the number of yes, no, and unanswered responses into the tally table. The next step in translating the information into easily understandable graphic representation would be for the researcher to group the information in the frequency or tally table into intervals or classes. Okay, so then you have to group the information accordingly to the way that you want it to be represented graphically appropriately according to what you would like. Okay, so like I said here, I'm just giving you basic examples, but you could do it in many different ways according to the specifications that's being asked of you, or especially when it comes to academics. Questions? Okay, so the tally table that we used before didn't really require us to classify the information into different kind of segments, etc., as there were only three answers to the question. So it was just yes, no, or no answer indicated on page 351. So this means there were already three existing classes of how we could group the answers according to those three classes. So, however, the example of the histogram in the previous section illustrates a case where it's necessary to make intervals or classes from collected data. So in this example, the researcher grouped the various grades of students into grade intervals to minimize the number of values represented on the graph. Once the data is grouped into classes, it will be easier to see the class in which most of the respondents' answers or other data points fall. Okay, so like I said, with that one, I wasn't too sure, I wasn't 100% sure how to group it into various classes when it came to the histogram. Okay, I'm not sure if I was supposed to put it in different classes or how to do it with the different classes of percentages. If you remember the histogram, which was on page 355. Questions? So you can then choose the most suitable type of graph on which to plot the group data. To ensure the data is represented in a very accessible and easily understandable manner. Specific information can then be interpreted and obtained from the graphs, and conclusions about the trends and patterns highlighted on the graph can be described and analyzed. So when reading graphs, one must realize that they often show relationships between two variables or sets of information. So we usually get the x-axis, and that represents one set of data, okay? And then we get the vertical axis, and that represents another set of data. So the x-axis is usually from left to right, and the y-axis is from top to bottom. So in this way, we can read the graph from here. They were talking more about temperature exactly. So We can see what the temperature was in each year, for example, or notice the trends. And we need to know that we need to correctly draw and put values on the axis to ensure that the information is displayed accurately. Okay, so when we're plotting graphs, we need to make sure that the information is accurate that we're entering into Excel, so that when we do have our graph, it comes out accurately. Okay, so make sure as well, the line graph is not, it's very simple. Make sure that when you're doing a line graph, you put the information in accurately. Questions? Is anyone confused about anything? Have I confused you anyway so far in this lecture? Okay. Please let me know, yeah? If I am confusing you in any way. So sometimes people choose graphs that do not best suit the data they would like to represent, and this can result in the graphs that look misleading. So incorrect drawing and compilation of graphs can also more easily result in errors in the display of data and can therefore misrepresent data a person aims to show. Moreover, it's important to carefully look at the details on a graph in order to read them accurately and to critically evaluate whether the graph is an accurate representation of the data it claims to depict. So for example, now we're going to look at two graphs, okay, that have different intervals, okay? So one interval represents an increase of 20 points. And actually, I just did 10 and 20, so not 20 and 40. So I did a graph with 10% increase and then one with a 20% increase. So graphs that display the same information in different ways in different publications can be confusing or misleading for readers. So in order to highlight a particular aspect of the data, graphs may be drawn differently, and the same information can therefore appear to show very different results. However, the differences may be merely a result of how the graphs have been drawn. So that means that we can use different intervals when depicting the data. For example, in the histogram that I showed you, I used different intervals from the one in the textbook. Okay, so in this way, the reader can get confused and not understand the information, but it's usually just because of the scales that have been used to depict the data. Okay, so here we can have a look at two bar graphs, okay? And they represent the same data, however, there are differences between them. So here is the first one, okay? We see, this is the one I showed you earlier before, comparison of marks of student A and student B. Okay, and then we see the scale here of 10%. Okay, and then if we go to the next one, we see there's a scale of 20%. So when we look at the two types of data, it may be confusing for the reader because we use two different scales of comparison. Questions? Okay, so here's just a brief explanation. Bar graphs using intervals of 20%. If you study the two graphs carefully, you will notice that the y-axis on the first graph is by 10%, while the second graph has a scale of 20%, like I said. Also, the maximum value of the first graph is 100%, while in the second graph, the maximum value is 80%. Okay. So if you did not know this or see this, you would incline to say that when looking at the graphs that the students achieve better results in the second graph than in the first graph. This is because the basis of the second graph reaches the maximum height of the y-axis and the intervals increase in, I'm not sure what the word is there, probably 10 amounts or 10%, which makes the difference in achievement more difficult to read. So we are on page, let me just tell you the page number. I think it's 357. Yeah, 357 and 358. Okay, so so this should remind you that we should always look at the intervals and labels of the axes as well as the titles of the graph to ensure that you understand what they're representing and what they are representing, and it's a reflection of the depicted data. Okay, so guys, basically what we're saying that is that make sure you understand what you are reading when you have a graph. Okay, look at the axes, look at the data, look at the percentage differences, look at the title of the graph, etc. Because it can lead you to some confusion in some instances if you don't understand what you are reading. Questions? So when drawing graphs, either by hand or using software such as Excel, we have to ensure that certain essential features are included. Certain parts of a graph are always labeled, and it ensures that it is clear what information the graph is displaying. So look at the vertical bar graph in the figure below to see what should be labeled on a graph. All right, so here we see it. Okay, and it's on page 359. Okay, I did the y-axis a little bit differently here. Sorry, I just want to show you something because I don't think I put the axes here, but let me just get out of this quickly. Okay, so let's go to Excel here and let's see if we can find that double bar graph here. Okay, so here, if we would want to insert the X and the Y axis. So if you look at this one here, and also here, I didn't exactly put the X and the Y axis. So we would go, when we're here on Microsoft Excel, to add chart element. Okay, it's under chart design, add chart element. It may be a little bit different on a Windows system. And then here we see we get axes. So it says primary, vertical, so we add them. Okay, and then here it says axes titles, so we add these as well. So if we click there, it's going to add the axes title for the primary, the horizontal and the vertical. Okay, and then if we click there, we're going to see it's going to come there, and then we can just label these. Okay, so those are the labels, and then we can also just click into the chart title there and add the title. So just for your information, okay? And then you can also represent all different kinds of data. So you can go through all of these and see how you want your data to be represented, just for your information. But here we know this is how you add the axes. So it's axes and axes titles. Any questions about that? And even the chart title? Questions? Okay. So we can see there that they have an example of a correctly labeled bar graph, and they have the graph title, which describes what the graph represents. Okay, the x-axis, which represents the independent variables, and then the y-axis, which represents the dependent variables. The additional key on some graphs, as indicated by the label series 1, illustrates further information such as exceptions or notes about the data, e.g., which month is with retail specials included. So when creating graphs, it's important to remember that the intersection of the x-axis and y-axis always represents the value 0. Okay, So where they intersect, it is 0. Okay, also the first interval from the 0 to the next value cannot be greater than the recurring verticals continuing on the axis, as this would result in misleading of data or display of data. Most graphs these days are generated using computer software such as Excel, and these programs can automatically generate graphs from frequency tables. These programs also offer a variety of graph types, which can be used to display data in meaningful ways. Questions? So I think I did give you the link for the third meeting in case we do go into it. So here it is again. Let me just give it to you. If we do go into it again, I mean into the third meeting. Okay, here it is. So Microsoft Excel is a program that we use to create basic maths operations and formulas. And as I've shown you, it can also be used to create professional looking graphs in spreadsheets using the data you have entered into the cells. For example, you may have used a spreadsheet to create a frequency table, and this recorded data can then be translated and recorded and displayed into the choice of graph that best represents the collected data. So how do we create a graph in Microsoft Excel? Let's go to the first step. So enter the data you have collected or researched into a spreadsheet. The information that appears in columns will be vertical on the graph, and the information that is entered into the rows will be horizontal on the graph. So the figure below shows the data entry for the attendance figures of an event. Okay, so I just took, I couldn't exactly see in the textbook what they were writing. So basically, this is how you plot the data, guys, as I've showed you on all 4 or 5 of the graphs that I've done. The different ways that we plot the data. So we make sure that we put the data or the frequency tables or the tally tables into our Microsoft Excel book. Okay, and it will be obviously sheet 1 or sheet 2, sheet 3, etc. Questions? About the first step. Okay, then we get to the second step. So once the entry of data is complete, highlight the cells you want to display in a graph. It is best to highlight or only highlight the cells that contains the values that must be displayed on the X and the Y axes. Once the graph has been compiled by the program, chart titles and other information may be added to it. The following figure below shows the highlighted data, which is now ready for compilation into a graph. Okay, so here we go, guys. I highlighted it, the information that I want to be displayed into a graph form. Okay, so that's the second step, we highlight it. Any questions about the second step? Okay, then we get to step 3. So on the menu bar, select insert and then select the type of graph that best depicts the collected data. So a large variety of graphs, pie charts, column line or bar graphs, etc. is available, and these types will appear on the tabs menu under the menu bar. Click the desired graph type, after which the program will automatically compile the data into the chosen graph format. The figure below shows an automatically generated bar graph, which was generated by Microsoft Excel after a chosen graph was selected. So yes, here we go. Here's my chart. Okay, so I put the data in and this is what it gave me with the chart title. I did show you guys how we do it in Excel. So once again, I'm going to show you again. So all that we did, or I think it was, where's that one? This one that I was doing, I just highlighted it, okay? And then if we don't want, I just put that in, but if we just want the data like this is what we do. So we'd highlight the cell and we'd go into insert and then recommended charts here, and then we would choose whichever one that we want, okay? So we were looking at the bar graph here. You can see because I only highlighted this, it still gives me there the chart title. And then of course I did also show you that when we click here on the chart and we go to chart design, we add the chart elements. Okay. Questions? Okay, and then once the bar graph has been compiled, a chart tools tab will appear from which you can apply various editing options, for example, adding a graph title, titles for the axes, and other features to suit your preferences. You can now change how the graph is formatted using the layout tab, which can also edit the data being represented in the graph. You should edit the graph in the way that will increase its ease of readability and in a format that is simple and aesthetically suitable for its purpose. The figure below shows the edited bar graph, which has been reformatted with added labels and features. So you can see here, I've added features. I've shown the percentage of each. I've shown here days of the week. I've shown you a number of people, and I've shown here attendance figures. Okay, so like I showed you in that specific example that I was doing, yeah. And then add chart elements, and I added data labels, etc., which you can go through and experiment with on your own to see what you want to add, but we definitely need the axes and we need the axes titles, okay? So just remember that whenever we're creating charts, and then we can look at different ways here when it comes to chart design, how we want the data, how broad we want the bars to be. Okay, guys, we have 1 minute left. Let's go into the next lecture. Okay, so go into the next lecture. I've given you the link and I'll meet you there. Board. All right. Right. So please mute your microphones. Some of you have come in here with your microphones on. Right. So let's continue with the 5th step. So once you are happy with the final representation of the data, you can select the graph and copy and paste it into a report, presentation, or other document in another program. The following figure below shows the exact extracted graph, which has been pasted into this document to make the graph's information more visible. Okay, so there we go. You can see I've made the numbers a little bit bigger at the top to make it easier to understand. You can also increase the font size, etc., of anything that you want to make a little bit bigger, more bold, so that the presentation can be more visually appealing to the audience, etc. You can even change the color of these so it can be a different color and it can show the numbers specifically. Any questions? Anything you want to ask me about the graphs, specifically about the line graph? No? No questions, guys? I don't see anyone writing in the chat. Alrighty. Okay, no questions. Fine. Are there any questions about the assessment? Okay, so I know that everybody got their marks. I just want to know, when you got your marks, were you able to see how I graded you? If I was the one that was grading you, were you able to see the comments I made? Okay, you did see the comments. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, so guys, so pay attention to the comments that was given to you. Okay, use it for constructive purposes for your summative. Okay. We had a lot of assessments to mark, so we couldn't like give feedback on every single point, but we tried our best. Okay, so yeah, so make sure that you read the feedback and how it can help you improve, okay, for your next assessment. Okay, so guys, the activity for today is activity 10B. Okay, now are all of you on a computer right now? Because I want you to try to do this. Is there anyone who's on a PC that wants to try activity 10B? Okay, so guys, I want you to do activity 10B because it's going to help you with the question on the summative. Okay, and like it's shown you, you input that data and you see how to do it, like I've showed you in the lecture today about how we create a graph or a line graph, bar graph, pie chart, etc. Okay. Does anyone have any question about today's lecture or anything about Microsoft Excel? Yes, Omalemo?
Okay, ma'am. So on the y-axis, the intervals. So after putting your information and everything, the Excel puts like those numbers on the y-axis for you.
Yes, so Excel automatically does everything for you. If you put the information in, see like how I've done it here. So you put the information in, like the way it's shown on page 364. If you put the data in like that, and then but remember, we mustn't highlight the day or sales and stuff. So if we just do this, and then we just go to insert, recommended chart, it's going to show us already the charts here and the intervals on the y-axis. Okay.
Okay, so you can like edit the intervals on the y-axis.
Yeah, that's what I'm really not sure about as well. So that's why I said here in this histogram here, I wasn't sure how to do the intervals. So I must just see how, I'll see today if I can find out how to do that about editing the intervals on the y-axis. Okay. And then I'll get back to you on that one. So with the intervals, that's what I wasn't too sure about, because even here, I was trying to create the percentages of the intervals and I wasn't sure. So let me do some more research about if I can change or how to change the intervals on a Mac and also on a Windows computer, and I'll get back to you on that one, okay?
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? But as I know, Microsoft Excel will put the intervals for you, but I'm going to see how we can change that manually if we want to change the intervals on either of the axes. All right, so our next lecture, hopefully I will know how to change the axes by our next lecture and I can show you. We're going to be talking about budgets, and you should think about why budgeting is important in both your personal life and for businesses and organizations. I can tell you that it's not too difficult when we do a budget, okay? And we can even get some budgeting software as well. But what will be a little bit challenging in our next lecture is knowing how to calculate interest, okay? And using different values for calculating interest. We're going to talk about compound interest and simple interest, etc. All right, any questions? Okay, so remember guys, if you have any questions about Microsoft Excel, I'm going to find out about the one about how I changed the intervals, okay? But if there's anything else, ask me, because as you asked me, I learn as well more in depth about the software that we're using or anything else that we're doing, okay? So I hope that I'll be better by next week to come into campus. By the way, we only have about 2 weeks left of lectures. So we're finishing on the last week will be on the 16th of, that's the last week of lectures, the 16th of May, which will actually be online, by the way. Right. So cool, guys. Yeah, I did receive some emails about questions about the assessments. Make sure you send me your emails. This month is a little bit difficult for me because I am at WITS, but I'm going to try my best to help you and to get back to you with all of your questions and your queries. Okay. Anything else you want to ask me about? Is there anything you need in terms of referencing? No? Everybody's okay with the line graph that you will be asked to do? Alrighty, guys. Okay, guys, good. And yeah, just also pay attention to the comments that we left on your first, on your formative assessment. All right. Okay, cool. Cool. Guys, it was nice having you here, even though there were only 7 or 8 or 10 people that came to the online class. I will upload the video a little bit later for the benefit of those who didn't attend, and I will see you guys in the week, which will probably be on Thursday. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.